Hello everyone and welcome to this Trend Watching webinar on truthful consumerism, the future of consumerism in a world of polarization, populism and post-truth. I'm David Mattin, Global Head of Trends and Insights here at Trend Watching, and I am so excited, too excited really, to share our big new idea with you. But they've given me a tranquilizer so I can get through the next 30 minutes in a relatively calm state. Because I live and breathe this stuff, and I hope that you are going to love it as much as I do, or we do here at Trend Watching. I'm speaking to you from the massive Jeff Bezos robot suit. Not really, of course, I wish, but I'm really speaking to you from the London office where my colleagues are hard at work. Perhaps you were hard at work just a few minutes ago. So thank you for tuning in wherever, whenever you are in the world. We've got thousands of you signed up from every continent, so thank you very much for that. Just a tiny bit of housekeeping. If you want to talk about what you're hearing, discuss, debate on Twitter, please do so under the hashtag Truthful Consumerism, and you can find me on @dmattin. But my AI, the special AI I built will weed out all your horrible comments and only show me the good ones. No, not really. I'll take anything you throw at me. Okay. So truthful consumerism, let's get started. The story really starts here. We've been in the lab at Trend Watching. We went to our community and we asked you, how can we make our content even better? What do you want from us? And you said you wanted deeper content, you wanted richer content, you wanted more varied types of content. We went away, we cogitated, and yes, we took action and we launched Trend Watching Quarterly. So every quarter we will dive deep into a big new topic that's crucial to the future of consumerism. There'll be a big report, a big trend briefing, if you will, but there'll also be regional takes, there'll be video content, there'll be infographics, there'll be interviews with key innovators, and yes, of course, there'll be webinars just like this one. And as you know, because you've signed up, the subject of this webinar is truthful consumerism. That's the subject of our first big Trend Watching Quarterly launch, the future of consumerism in this new age of populism, polarization, and post-truth. I wonder if these two guys are tuned in. Unlikely. It would be great if they were, but it's unlikely. Okay, so truthful consumerism. Let's dive right into this big new idea. And really, I'll start here with these three very arresting numbers. The Edelman Trust Barometer was published in January. The world's biggest survey of global trust. They speak to over 30,000 people in like 25, 26 different countries. And this year they found that trust in the major institutions that shape our lives, so business, media, and government, has fallen to all-time lows. Moreover, 62% say they're concerned about globalization, and a full 27% of people said they're fearful of globalization. An amazing 53% of people say the system is failing. How did we get to this moment? To understand how, of course, we have to rewind back quickly to the events of 2016, the earth-shaking events of 2016, which are still reverberating now, even as Q1 2017 comes to a close. Some of those events, very quickly, of course, I'm talking about Brexit in the UK, I'm talking about Trump in the US, Marine Le Pen's hovering on the horizon for the French presidential election in April. But this isn't just a Western phenomenon. You know, think about the election of the hardline right-wing populist Duterte in the Philippines. Massive 2 million people strong protests in South Korea leading to the impeachment of the president there. The impeachment of Dilma Rousseff after huge protests in Brazil. You can dive in to the full report. You probably already have trendwatching.com/quarterly to hear more about the events that have driven us to this moment. You can see them spread over a map in front of you now. But where are we now? In the dying days of Q1 2017, it's clear those events and their aftershocks have brought us to a new moment, one that is characterized by more polarized societies, new kinds of populism, the specter of post-truth, plummeting trust, and lots of anger. That is where we are now. The commentary on that has been endless. The news, the print, the media commentary, of course, has been endless. At TrendWatching, our question when it comes to this new moment is the same question we ask relentlessly about everything we see in the world around us at TrendWatching. What does this mean for the future of consumerism? And how should brands respond to thrive in this environment? Where are the opportunities here for brands? That's what we at TrendWatching, as you guys well know, that's what we at TrendWatching are all about. Now, to answer that question, it pays to kind of dive into the deeper drivers, right? Not just the surface events, but the deeper drivers that helped bring those events about. And just very quickly, because you, again, can dive into the report to hear about this, I'm talking about things like the failure of globalization to share affluence equally. There's rising inequality in lots of markets. People are very angry about that. That helped bring us to Trump and Brexit and so on. I'm talking about epic movements of people around the globe, including the Syrian refugee crisis and all the problems attendant on that. The filter bubble, fake news. People are aware they're trapped in this bubble online of information and opinions and ideas that just confirms what they already think, and that's a problem. And then just the future shock of rapid technological change and all the problems attendant on that. Those are some of the deep drivers that helped fuel those earthquakes of 2016. So what should brands do? How can they thrive in this new environment? It's tempting to say there's nothing they can do. This is just too complex, too difficult, too adverse an environment for them to operate in meaningfully. Of course, that's not true. Certainly not in our belief. Okay, so how can brands respond in this new environment? What is the answer that will see them thrive? Well, our answer in a nutshell, and of course we're going to dive deeper into this and everything that comes, but our answer in a nutshell: the future still belongs to those who believe in progress, and progress comes via innovation. So your response as a brand to this new moment: harness the power of innovation to build a better future for all. There it is in a nutshell. Believe in progress, innovate to fuel progress. If you can do that as a brand, you will be in a great place, you'll be in a meaningful place. It won't be easy, and it will mean dealing with circumstances and, yes, even people that you don't like. This is Tim Cook at that Silicon Valley leaders kind of summit with Trump that he had shortly after he was elected. I'll leave you to consider how happy Tim Cook looks to be there with President Trump. It will mean dealing with some difficult ideas, some challenges. This is a deeply challenging environment for brands, but it is a uniquely powerful time for brands too, to step up and prove who they are, what they mean, what they believe in, really, and how they make the world better. Okay? So, harness the power of innovation to build a better future for all. That's our answer in a nutshell. But of course, how? How can you do that? Okay, well, our answer to that is there are 5 key forces, powerful forces, shaping our future, our shared future in the years ahead. And that despite all the uncertainty and all the change of this moment, those 5 key forces, or 5 truths, you can see what we've done there with truthful consumerism. Those 5 truths are as relevant and as powerful as ever, and they present amazing opportunities to brands and businesses and startups around the world. And those 5 forces or truths are transparency, aspiration, positive impact, tolerance, and empowerment. And I just want to run through each of those 5 big truths one by one, talk to you about why they are so powerful, why they are not going away, why they're powerful forces for you to ground your innovation in, and then show you examples of brands and businesses from all over the world already doing just that to help inspire and spark your own ideation sessions. So yes, what we're saying is if you ground your innovation as a brand, or ground your next product, your next service, your next brand, your entire brand strategy in one or more of those truths, you will be on terrain that is meaningful and lasting. You'll be building value for consumers, and you'll be ensuring your continued relevance and your survival as a brand. So that is our answer to this post-truth moment. Okay, So truth number one, the future is still transparency. Yes, we're in a post-truth moment right now, and the post-truth analysis has a lot of virtues. It has a lot going for it, and we all remember the spectre of fake news and the impact that probably had on the Trump election and so on. But post-truth does not change the ultimate truth of our progress towards a world of ever more relevant, more accessible, more useful, more timely information. That force, that onward march towards a future of ever greater transparency is very real, it's very powerful, and it's simply not going away in the years ahead, and it presents amazing opportunities to brands. Now, what are some of the big drivers pushing us along that road towards a future of transparency, of ever greater transparency? The big driver here, the epic single driver here, is of course connectivity. Just take a second to consider the fact that according to the latest data, early 2017, more than 50% of all humans on this planet now use a smartphone. That is an incredible statistic. And it's not just the fact that they have smartphones and they're using them. Use of smartphones to access information, data, content, media is growing exponentially. Look at this graph and look at the volume of data being handled. It's just growing, it's shooting up through the roof through 2015, 2016. So people are using their smartphones to access all kinds of information at an ever faster rate. And these are smartphone wielding people who are empowered, billions of them, to know pretty much anything they want to know, wherever they are, almost instantly. And that is one of the big reasons why, really, the future is still transparency, that this is a powerful force shaping our future that is not going away. Just one glimpse of that when it comes to the future of consumerism, peer reviews. Peer reviews are something that trend people like us have been talking about, talked about years ago. But look at this graph of the number of peer reviews being posted on the massive peer review site Yelp. You can see it took them about 7 or 8 years to get to their first 30 million, but they've had another 30 million reviews in about the last, 18 months. So yes, for people like us, peer reviews are very old news, but for the mainstream, the power of peer reviews is only really getting started now, is only becoming apparent now, and they're only starting to just invest in them now. So connected people who are empowered to share information with one another about your new product, your new brand. How good is it? Does it work? What does it look like? What does it feel like in my home? All this kind of stuff that they're talking about you relentlessly. That is really only just getting started. There is so much road left to run when it comes to this peer-to-peer review, fueled, road to transparency. And that is why transparency is, again, one of these big forces shaping our future that simply is not going away. So what does all this mean for your brand? Well, 3 very quick takes on that. Number 1, it means the barriers, really the boundaries between the inside of your brand and the outside of your brand are fading away. Consumers are now able to see deep inside your brand, to see what's going on in there, to talk about that with others. If there's things going on inside your brand that shouldn't be going on, they will eventually come out, because much like this fish, your brand is increasingly transparent. Number 2, it means you need to speak the language of your consumers and speak it efficiently, because they're way too busy they're way too saturated, really, with all kinds of other information to deal with bad or inefficient information. And number 3, it means you need to connect your customers, your consumers to one another so they can inform one another, because they trust each other way more than they trust you or any other business or powers that be. So let's have a look really quickly at 3 examples of brands and businesses putting this truth into action, riding this truth that is transparency right now. The first is Stella McCartney, the luxury fashion brand. They did something very interesting recently. In October 2016, they launched environmental profit and loss accounting. So actually quantifying their impact on the environment, on the planet. Of course, becoming more transparent about your impact on the planet for a brand is nothing new, but this is taking it one step further, doing something very interesting by actually quantifying that impact, finding a new way, a new metric in order to communicate that impact to the wider world, to the public. Okay, a second example. We saw there that was about opening the doors on your brand, becoming more transparent about your impact as a brand. What about building an entire brand around the truth that is transparency? This is Alit, and they want to be an entirely transparent wine brand. So they were launched in November 2016, and really the reason for the existence of Alit is transparency, and in particular price transparency. So they make a $24.75 bottle of Pinot Noir, and they are totally transparent. They totally break down every element, every building block of that final price, from kind of growing the grapes to pressing them, you know, the labor, putting it in the bottle, the transport. They totally break it down. And you can see how that's a very powerful transparency play in an industry that's renowned for being opaque and mysterious and the domain of the guru. You know, we often, no one really knows why most bottles of wine are priced the way they are. Alit wants to explode that, mystique around the wine industry and its products, and just be a totally transparent brand. So a very powerful transparency play because it's in an industry that's so renowned for not being transparent. And one third really important angle on transparency. Yes, consumers expect to be able to know all about you, to be able to open the doors on you and see what's going on inside, and increasingly they can. But they also have the rising expectation that the entire world be made more transparent, that the entire world be made more knowable and instantly accessible. And of course that's being fueled too by Google, by, you know, smartphone culture. Tap your phone, find out anything instantly. Consumers just expect the entire world now to be knowable in that way, or at least they're heading towards that expectation. So how can you serve that expectation? Well, this is Red Bull playing in that space. They did something really interesting in October 2016. They hacked payphones around Sao Paulo to provide real-time spoken updates on bus arrival time. So they took the payphone nearest to the bus stop, they hacked it so that you could, you know, pick up that payphone and hear when the next bus was going to arrive. This is all part of an initiative they ran called Red Bull Basement, which is about using technology in the urban environment to make the urban environment more livable. But I'm not telling you that you need to go out and hack payphones to let people know when their bus is going to arrive. What I'm telling you is that the expectation that this is tapping into is so profoundly powerful. The expectation that the world be made more knowable, that information be made more accessible, and that brands play a part in that brands help that happen. So what could you do to make the world of your consumers, the world of your customers, more knowable, more instantly accessible in that way? Okay. Perhaps you've had your first light bulb moment. How could you open up the doors in everything that's going on inside your brand? Like Stella McCartney found a new way to do that. How could you build an entire new brand around the truth that is transparency? Or how could you empower consumers to just tease open a new informational aspect of the world, to know more about the world more easily, thanks to you? Really, really powerful ways to ride this ongoing truth that is transparency. Okay, truth number 2. The future is still aspiration. The drive to do more, to be more really, and to let the entire world see that. That's as old as human nature. It taps in to that deep human need for status, and fundamentally that race, for the aspiration race, the status race, is not going away. It's so deeply encoded into our natures, it's never going away. It expresses itself in new ways though, and crucially, the aspiration race, the status race in the years ahead is only going to grow and only going to become more intense, thanks to some very big drivers pushing it along. So why is the future still aspiration? Why is the status race going to become an even more powerful force in the years ahead? Let's take a look at some quick drivers of that. One of the big drivers here is the growth of a truly global middle class. So you can see where we are now. 7 billion people on the planet, about 2 billion middle class people. By 2030, that will be 8 billion on the planet, but 4.9 billion middle class people. So that's billions more middle class people whose basic needs are met who are able to turn their attention to a higher order basic human need, which is status, who are able to join the status race. And this emergence of a truly global middle class, hundreds of millions of new middle class people, especially in Asia, is just going to grow the status race in the years ahead. But the status race isn't only going to grow, it's also going to become more intense. And one of the big reasons for that is harking back to a driver we talked about before, connectivity, the Instagram window that every connected person has on the lifestyles on the most desirable, most fabulous lifestyles on the planet, basically. Every connected person is just a tap away from the knowledge that Kylie Jenner, who's just 19 years old, has recently bought her fourth mansion. And that kind of information, that window onto the world's most fabulous lifestyles is driving the status race, is making the status race more intense. There's no doubt about it. But the status race isn't just going to grow, it's not going to just become more intense, it's also going to change shape. It's going to morph into something new. The nature of it will change. In affluent markets especially, we're all so affluent now that markers of material wealth are losing their status power. They just don't have the status currency that they used to. And what we see, especially in these affluent markets, is that status then is changing. It's moving away from being predominantly about what I have and much more about who I am as a person. I mean, smarter, healthier, more connected, more creative, more enterprising than the rest. That is the direction that the status race is moving in, especially in more affluent markets. And that's being massively fueled again by social media that makes personal experiences and personal achievement just a very instantly shareable currency. You know, you can do something amazing, achieve something amazing, share that online and soak up the status that comes. So the status race is changing shape in that way, especially in affluent markets. Let's have a look then at a few brands and startups putting this very powerful truth that is the aspiration race, the status race, into action. The first I want to show you is Bolt. This is an Indian startup. It's making a range of wearable devices that are going to sit about your body, as wearable devices do, collect a ton of physiological data. But Bolt is also building an AI that will crunch all that data, cogitate it, and deliver to you personalized coaching and fitness and nutrition plans. Okay, so essentially supercharging your self-improvement by putting an AI to work to deliver personalized coaching to you. That's an incredibly powerful way of supercharging self-improvement. And we know that because of this status race, consumers are obsessed with their self-improvement. Think about what we just talked about in affluent markets. Status is more about who I am as a person. That leads to this obsession with self-improvement. Here's a startup serving that obsession. So really riding that powerful truth that is aspiration. And Bolt's ecosystem of wearable devices launches later this year in Q3 2017, they say, at the moment, if things don't get delayed. So that takes a look at fueling the status race as it's expressed through self-improvement. But there's still huge opportunities there for brands to fuel the status race that's more about material advancement and material security and material and enterprising aspiration. Huge opportunities there too. Here's one example of that. This is Tiger Beer. What they did is they set up a fund last year in September 2016 to give funds to new street food hawkers in Singapore. So if you wanted to become a street food hawker in one of the big established hawker markets in Singapore, you could apply to this fund. You get a sort of seed capital of $10,000 that you could spend to set up your stall, buy some products, do a bit of marketing, all from Tiger Beer. So Tiger Beer really supporting enterprising people who are joining the status race and want to ensure and further their material prosperity. And there are still huge opportunities around that when it comes to this very powerful force that is aspiration and the way that brands can get involved in it. And here's a similar example, an absolutely amazing example that I'm really thrilled to be able to feature. This is Tukezi. okay? In some emerging markets, fueling the aspiration race can be something as simple as, though of course the truth is it's not simple, it's very difficult, and they've done it very well, as simple as just making a market more efficient. So MasterCard partnered with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation on this 2KZ app. And what this app does is it connects smallholder farmers in East Africa to agents and buyers who want to buy their produce. The market was very inefficient. A lot of produce went to waste. Prices bounced up and down all over the place. The market was totally unreliable simply because smallholder farmers were not able to communicate with potential buyers effectively. This app just kills that problem stone dead, makes the market much more efficient, and is really delivering for those smallholder farmers, making their income much more reliable and massively reducing wastage of produce. And it's an amazing app, and I'm really thrilled that we've spoken to the innovators behind this app. We've spoken to the people at MasterCard, and we'll be writing up that interview and featuring it as part of our Truthful Consumerism package of content soon. So check out trendwatching.com/quarterly for an interview with the guys behind that app if you're keen to hear more about that in the days ahead. Okay, so again, that light bulb moment. How could you, as a brand, as a business, as a startup, as an individual even, how could you ride this very powerful truth that is aspiration? How could you fuel this relentless obsession with self-improvement that consumers are developing or have developed? How could you think about material prosperity and enterprise aspiration? How could you think about, in emerging markets, truly emerging markets, making markets more efficient, helping people take the first steps towards being members of the status race? Hugely powerful questions, massively powerful ground for any brand to be standing on in 2017 and beyond. Okay, third truth, the future is still positive impact. Yes, there are millions of consumers all around the world who just want more, shinier, faster, better, but still the direction of travel is towards brands that have a positive impact on the planet, on societies, on individuals, just on the world around them. We're still moving towards a future where consumers will expect the brands they deal with, the organizations they deal with, the people they deal with to have a positive impact on the world around them. That can feel pretty difficult to believe right now when we're still polluting the planet at the rate we are, when Trump has just ripped up Obama's protections on the climate, but the future is still positive impact. Why is that true? Here's a few big reasons. Number one is the guilt spiral. Rising numbers of consumers are locked in this spiral of guilt when it comes to the negative impacts of their consumption on the planet, on society, and on themselves. And they are looking for brands to assuage that guilt. They're looking for brands who enable them to continue consuming without feeling that terrible guilt. In fact, recent survey from Unilever, 33% of consumers are choosing to buy from brands they believe are doing social, environmental good. And that's sure to continue, only to keep trending in that direction in the years ahead. Another big reason, a new wave of ethical startups that are just reconfiguring, rewiring really what consumers expect on how good consumerism can be, on the good that consumerism can do. So think about Tom's, the buy one, give one shoe brand, or Tesla, the electric car brand. Brands, startups, insurgent brands like this are changing what consumers think about how good consumerism can be, the good it can do for the planet and for society. And they're now bringing those new expectations to the big old legacy brands and businesses that they deal with. That old phenomenon that we talk about so often at TrendWatching, but it's never going to stop being powerful. Expectation transfer. These insurgent brands create new expectations that consumerism can be good for the world, and those expectations are then transferred to other brands and businesses too. Okay, so let's have a look at some brands and businesses putting that truth that is positive impact to work. As a big old legacy sinful brand, what can you do to ride that truth that is positive impact? One thing you can do is turn your vast scale, turn your vast footprint into an asset. So choose the massive, epic shared challenge that the world faces right now that only you can solve, that you are uniquely placed to solve, and take action. Unilever have done just that with their amazing Lifebuoy soap hand washing campaign. According to the World Health Organization, 800,000 children around the world, mostly in emerging markets, die of preventable diarrhea every year. Now, with its Lifebuoy hand washing campaign, Unilever is reaching hundreds of millions of children around the world, hundreds of millions of people, over 300 million people so far, with life-saving hand hygiene advice. And it's ultimately their aim to reach 1 billion people on the planet with that advice. So an amazing example of a big old legacy brand turning its vast scale into an advantage and doing profound good with that advantage. A really powerful way for a big brand to ride the truth that is positive impact. What does it look like if technology, or in this case social media companies, try to find the one big epic challenge we face and solve it? This is Facebook, Microsoft and Twitter coming together to fight terrorism content online. So they're going to track it, they're going to identify it, they're going to try and get it removed, they're going to have a shared database so they can share knowledge and try and find out who's behind it too. So again, choosing a problem that they are uniquely placed to solve, in this case the spread of malign content, and taking action on that. And another really powerful way to take action on this truth that is positive impact, to ride this truth, is to take action that's constructive and helpful in a crisis. So this is Banco Estado, the bank from Chile. What they did in January 2017, after a spate of forest fires in a region of Chile, they postponed debt payments from consumers who had been impacted by those forest fires. So if your business or your home was impacted by that fire, they said, okay, look, you don't have to make your current loan repayment schedule, we can take action to help you out. So just a small but powerful example of taking constructive action in a crisis to help society, to help other people in a meaningful way. So 3 really quick shards there of this epic truth that is positive impact, okay, that is simply not going away in the years ahead because of the guilt spiral, because of the continued insurgency of brands that show that consumerism can be good for the planet, for society, for individuals. So how can you as a brand ride that truth that is positive impact? Okay, truth number 4. The future is still tolerance. Acceptance and embrace of difference and other people is part of our nature, but it's not all of our nature, or the world would be a very different place. So building walls between ourselves and others, being suspicious of the other, being suspicious of difference, is part of our nature too. And right now it kind of feels we're in the middle of a backlash against the liberal dream of a more open, connected, more tolerant world. It kind of feels like the forces of intolerance are emboldened right now and are on the march right now. And yet we're saying here at TrendWatching that the future is still tolerance. We are making slow, yes, uneven, yes, but still progress towards a future of ever greater acceptance and tolerance and celebration of diversity and difference. Why is that true? Well, 3 big reasons of this triad of forces make it true. They're pushing us towards a world of ever greater tolerance. The first is a more connected world. We talked, and we don't have to talk again about online, about digital connectivity. Just consider this. In 1950, there were 22 million international journeys on the planet. In 2016, there were 1.2 billion international journeys. So we're not just a more digitally connected world, we're a more physically interconnected world too, by far. And that's important because in the end, prejudice and intolerance are born of limitations. They're born of limited, authentic experience of other people. And when you have that authentic experience, when you're much more connected to all kinds of different people from all over the world and all kinds of diversity, that condition, the limitations that make prejudice possible, diminishes, and you move towards a world of ever greater tolerance. Okay, and there's another big connected driver here, and that's urbanization. We know that in a similar way, cities are engines of tolerance because they throw people of wildly different backgrounds together. They throw a very diverse group of people together into this whirlwind of choice and affluence and new experiences. And that just diminishes tolerance. That acts on those people in a way that, that encourages tolerance and diminishes prejudice. Consider this, right now, or at least in 2015, when the most recent UN stats were published, 54% of the world's population lives in cities. By 2050, it will be 66% of the world's population. That's 2.5 billion more city dwellers by 2050. And that's the second big reason why we're on this roadmap towards a future of ever greater acceptance of diversity and difference, and ever greater tolerance. And the third big reason is education. Just really quickly, in 1995, 15% of people on the planet participated in some form of higher education. By 2015, that was 34%. And that is important because we know that participating in further or higher education tends to, not definitely, but it does tend to make people more tolerant of diversity and difference. So you've got those three big drivers: a more connected world, urbanization, and education, pushing us towards a world of tolerance. Now, how can you as a brand ride that truth that is tolerance? One way is simply just let the world know that tolerance is a value that you hold dear. This is Amazon Prime. They ran a online video campaign in November 2016, where they had a priest and an imam talking to one another about their faith, bonding over the fact that their religious duties, although they're from different religions, their religious duties both take a toll on their knees. And then the video kind of ends with them ordering on Amazon Prime like some knee stuff for each other that they're going to find helpful. Yeah, it's pretty glib, it's pretty ridiculous, but the truth, the value that it's tapping into is very real, very powerful, and deadly serious, really, which is this onward march towards a future of ever greater tolerance. How can you as a brand prove to the world that this is a value that you share? When you're doing that, or if you want to try and do that, think local context. It will really help you with your ideation session and help you come up with something in the end that is meaningful where you are. So this is Petronas. This is the Malaysian oil company. They ran a campaign last year that was about exploding racial stereotypes of Indians in Malaysia. So a very context, local specific campaign around tolerance from this Malaysian oil company. What local issue could you take on that's relevant to tolerance in your market, among your community, with your customers, to prove that this value of tolerance is one that you understand? And of course, the most powerful way to ride this truth that is tolerance is to take action, to actually do something that helps those people who need it most when it comes to the value that is tolerance. So this is Airbnb in January taking action on the Trump travel ban. Airbnb said, if you've been impacted by the Trump travel ban, we will, via our platform, via our people, endeavor to offer you the accommodation you need because your travel has been disrupted. So taking powerful action to say to the world, we don't agree with something that's just happened. Tolerance is a value we hold dear, and we're going to act on that. We're going to do something about it. Now, one word of warning on applying that truth. There's a lot of anger around, and riding the truth that is tolerance, grounding your brand in the truth that is tolerance, will earn you some hate as well as some love. And we've seen that. We saw that with what happened to Budweiser. They ran a campaign around immigration with the Super Bowl. You know, it had its faults, sure, but they took a lot of heat for that campaign from a lot of people who didn't agree fundamentally with what they were saying. So riding this truth that is tolerance will bring you some heat. If you don't want to feel that heat, don't ride this truth. Don't go into the kitchen. It's the only answer, basically. But what we would contend is that, yes, you'll feel some heat in the short term. You'll feel some love too. But in the long term, history is on your side. You are standing on ground that is powerful and meaningful. You are riding a powerful force that is simply not going to go away in the years ahead. And that is a sustainable, meaningful, good place to be as a brand. Okay. Truth number 5, the future is still empowerment. We're in the midst right now of this epic power shift away from institutions like big business, traditional media, government, and towards the individual. We're in an age now of empowerment of the individual, and that is a force that in the years ahead is simply not going to go away. I don't have to dive deep into the drivers here, because really the drivers of this 5th truth are simply pretty much the other 4 truths that we've talked about. You know, think about the world of transparency and the amazing ability it's given consumers to know anything they want to know almost instantly. Think about the growth of this global middle class and its endless status-fueled aspiration. Think about rising acceptance of the value that is tolerance, the idea that human beings should all have equal dignity and a shared voice. All of that is pushing us relentlessly towards this future of empowerment of the individual. Just one shard, one glimpse of what that world looks like. If you think that the ability to deliver trusted information has always been a pretty good proxy for power. Traditionally, it's been powerful bodies, powerful organizations and institutions, and powerful people who are trusted to deliver trusted information. Now look at this from the Edelman Trust Barometer. 60% of people say it's a person just like them who they trust most as a credible source of information. Way more than CEOs, way more than government, and in fact the same as an academic or technical expert. So that's just one glimpse of this onward march towards a world of empowerment of the individual. How can you ride this final truth that is empowerment? One great way: empower those who are unempowered. So this is the US telco company Sprint. They recently launched a project, a 1 million project, to give 1 million disadvantaged students in the US a smartphone and a data plan. Okay, so a really simple, powerful, straightforward way of riding this truth that is empowerment. Empower those who are still currently unempowered. This is First Bank of Nigeria doing something different and yet the same. Empowering those who need it most, empowering the traditionally unempowered. So what they did, First Bank of Nigeria, is launch a new bank account that's all about supporting female entrepreneurs, women in business in Nigeria. So yes, you get the standard bank account, but you also get leadership advice, you get events where you can meet up with fellow female entrepreneurs in Nigeria, you can get mentoring, you can get financial and wealth management advice. Just a bank account that's all about empowering, giving grease to the elbow of female entrepreneurs and business people in Nigeria. And a final way, think about the amazing explosion, connectivity-fueled explosion of collective action, collective empowerment. Yes, we're talking about empowerment of the individual here, but that becomes a whole different picture and powerful in an entirely new way when millions of individuals around the world are able to join together to do something collectively. You get a new kind of individual collective empowerment, if you will. And I'm thinking here about things like crowdfunding, the amazing explosion of creativity and investment and activity that's gone on there. This is an example we saw recently called Cats Not Ads. It was a Kickstarter campaign to replace every single billboard on a London Underground station, or subway station if you like, with a picture of a cat. It was done by an agency called Glimpse Collective. Yes, of course, it's ridiculous, it's playful, but the very serious point behind it is to encourage people, consumers out there, to realize their collective power, the new collective power they have to make changes to their environment. Once upon a time, you had to be a big business to buy billboard advertising space, yet certainly to buy all of them. Now, you know, thousands of people can collectively take action to bring change to their urban environment in a new way. And that's a really interesting shard of this truth that is individual empowerment. So how can you as a brand ride that truth? How can you empower the traditionally unempowered? How can you facilitate new forms of collective empowerment? Very powerful ground to be standing on as a brand if you're asking yourself those questions. Okay. So we've raced through those truths: transparency, aspiration, positive impact, tolerance, empowerment. 5 powerful forces shaping our shared future in the years ahead. If you ground your innovation in one or more of those forces, you will be in a good place as a brand. There's more top content coming. I said there's going to be innovator interviews, there's going to be video summaries. Check those out at trendwatching.com/quarterly in the days ahead. And it only remains for me really to check to see if we've had any questions, and it looks to me as though we have. I'm just scanning some questions now. How does transparency interact with populism? That's a very, very deep and a very good question. I think transparency has a massive role to play in sort of scrutinizing and examining the actions that this new wave of populist politicians are taking part in. But we all know that there's a lot of noise in the system right now. You know, the spectre of fake news, which is very difficult to deal with. The filter bubble, which is very difficult to deal with. You know, there are consumers out there who understand that they are not getting the full picture. They're not being able to understand the motives of their politicians and scrutinize their politicians the way they want to. And yes, of course, a trend watching take on that is a serious problem. It's also a huge opportunity for brands to do some social good, which in the end will be good for everyone and good for them too. So how can you as a brand take action on that? How can you empower people? How can you facilitate them with transparency is a huge opportunity. What do luxury brands such as Gucci have to do to be successful in a post-truth era? I mean, it strikes me that, well, the 5 truths are the place to start. It strikes me that the truth that is aspiration has profoundly powerful opportunities and implication for luxury brands. If you think about the status race and you think about the deep relationship there's always been between luxury and status, and think about the things we talked about, how status is changing now, less about what I have as a person and much more about who I am as a person. Okay, so luxury brands traditionally have been about brands that allow you to display your material wealth. But status is now changing. It's less about material displays and more about who I am. So how can luxury brands get in there and help people prove that I am more connected, I am smarter, I am healthier, I am more invested in my wellness, I'm more enterprising than the next person? Those are huge opportunities there for luxury brands to contend with. Okay, I'm always around for further questions. Get me at david@trendwatching.com or @dmattin on Twitter. It's been so fun talking to you guys. Thanks so much for listening. Remember, you must take action on these truths if they're going to mean anything. Trends are useless if you just know about them. You have to take action, innovate around these truths to build the future. That is what will ensure your future as a brand too. So get going. Get going and good luck. Let me know how it's going for you. Thank you so much for listening. I will check out for now.